All right, so aside from this forum, right, because the forum is the how-to that we're going to try. Everybody's got a million logins. It's kind of hard to get a new one and to actually be invested in it. But since it's been requested and since people are stepping up to actually provide the server and then to set up the installation, and since we're all here technically invested in the overlap, we're the people who came, after all, to hear what the other people were doing, we ought to give it a little bit of a whirl. We didn't talk about yet, aside from, what's your name again? John's suggestion that somebody from the knowledge sharing group present somebody who the knowledge sharing group overall has felt speaks very clearly about this overlap and how to kind of interact with the people who are in innovation or who might be able to summarize the most salient points from that group, speak to us. If that person wants to self-nominate or anyone wants to throw someone under the bus, by all means, feel free. Or you can give us another suggestion. What is there that you want to communicate? Because if we've got this platform, it's not going to succeed unless lots of people are like actually dying to say something on it, right? We got to start thinking about what it is that we want to tell one another there. Go ahead.
No, I'm not nominating myself, but wondering if maybe we can ask them these questions, if there's a way to write up 2 or 3 questions for them. Sorry, I was just outside, so I may have missed that. But to actually say to them, you have been talking about these same things. Here are 2 concrete questions that we have for you, and maybe let that start the discussion. Have them written up on the board and have the space for them to brainstorm.
Yeah, I think that's great. That was kind of the original idea, is those of us who haven't been at the other building, who don't know what the knowledge sharing people have been discussing, you know, it's a crapshoot who's going to stand up and which specific topics are going to get emphasized. That's what they want to tell us. But what do you want to know? If you've been here in the Access to Innovation track, what are you hoping to hear by staying an additional hour, by being one of those 50% of attendees who's here? What were you hoping to hear? Let's ask a question, right? Go on. What do we want to know about the knowledge sharing people? Somebody in the back has, you got a microphone.
Okay, thank you. Hi, yes, I attended this morning's session on web governance, and since the moderator, who is Julius Squire from the World Bank, could not be here this afternoon, he asked me to summarize what we discussed, so I can do that now if you want, or later, whenever is more convenient for you.
Well, we can, it's not really my decision. If nobody has any questions, we can do this by a show of hands. You're going to have to participate, though, so she doesn't feel embarrassed. She's offering to actually speak, right? This is somebody from the knowledge track. Raise your hands if you'd like to hear what she has to say. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can I come up? Okay. Maybe you should just go up there. Can I stand?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you here this afternoon and meet all of you. And I recognize a few familiar faces from the previous Web for Development conferences and the one we had here at the UN about 2 years ago. And I'm glad to see a lot of new faces, too, to continue with this conference. I just want to very briefly share with you what we covered this morning. In the web governance workshop, there were 3 sections, and we had 2 video conferences, one from London and one from Egypt. The one from London was with Dr. David Pullinger, who is head of the Digital Policy Central Office of Information. He provided a case study of what they've done for the UK government, and it was very helpful. He provided also some tools and his experience with what they've done with the websites. He gave us some very impressive statistics. In April 2006, the UK government was closing one website every day, one government website every day, and they reduced them down to 2 websites, basically. One is DirectGov, and the other one is BusinessLink. And so what they've done is to take the content from several of these websites and repurpose it and tailor it basically to the needs of the users. They've done several studies, several surveys of their users, and so they've done this for different reasons to make the costs of website maintenance more cost-effective, because whereas before, each department would have their own website and would also be responsible for all the costs of maintaining these websites, which would keep growing. Now they could continue to be responsible, but the content would be on one particular website that everybody would know to go to. And there are a couple of websites now, they're the major ones. So his information about how he went about doing that was very, very practical and very informative. And then we also had representation from the UN system. So there were several people who spoke from the UN system. One was Nick Harrison from the World Bank. And he provided the experience of the World Bank with web governance for their internet. Natalie Leroy from the UN Secretariat provided the UN experience for the UN's intranet. And this was another case study that was presented. And then a representative from the Food and Agricultural Organization, who was Romulo Tassone, provided the FAO experience on web governance and their internet website. So all of these speakers provided the tools that they used, the approach that they took, all very informative and practical and helpful to all of us who are still, struggling in this area of web governance. We had a representative also from an intergovernmental organization that was developed from the World Summit for the Information Society that took place originally in Geneva, and then there was a follow-up meeting, a follow-up summit in Tunis. And the name of this group is the Overview of Internet Governance Forum. So Marcus Kramer, who was video conferenced in from Egypt, explained to us what this group is and what they do, and the principles, the WSIS principles, and also provided some suggestions for some recommendations for the UN system, basically to follow these principles and to try to make use of and implement some existing tools such as UN treaties. The treaty, for example, on the rights of people with disabilities, to provide websites that are web accessible to the disabled, and also at the same time web accessibility in different languages. So in his conclusions, he said that the UN should aim to be a model user as far as web governance, and also that the WSIS principles ought to be applied to the extent possible, and this refers to interoperability. Again, following the UN treaties, that they should be respected on UN websites as far as making them available or accessible to the disabled and in various languages. And the IT policy in light of international consensus and best practices would be very helpful, for all UN system websites to follow. Then we had a representative from the private sector, Lisa Welkman, who is the founding partner of Welkman Peerpoint. And the main points that she made were explaining how web governance exists within a larger web operations management landscape. She provided examples of the companies that she's worked with. She worked with Cisco Systems, and then she also clearly defined web governance, what it is and how she's worked with it, described what she sees in other organizations working with web governance, talked about why web governance might be difficult in different situations, and offered some suggested next steps to enable this process to take place in the different organizations, both in public and private industry.